Hey there, true believers, and welcome to episode one of the Fantastic Four Fancast. My name is Nate Charles. I'm one of your hosts, and my co-host is Shane Murray. Shane, how are you doing tonight?
All right, how you doing tonight, bud?
It's been a day, but I'm excited for us to get started on doing this podcast. You and I have been fans of the Fantastic Four for a while. They're my favorite super team personally. And I've been, you know, wanting to do a deep dive into the comics, which we'll certainly be doing that. Um, but yeah, I guess, the big thing we should start with, with this episode is, letting people know what, we want to accomplish with this podcast and what they can expect going forward, as well as give them some insight as to what got us into the Fantastic Four, some of our favorite runs and moments, and, what they can expect coming up from us.
I want to say it was just before COVID when we came up with the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and I'm glad we settled on the Fantastic Four because, like I said, they are my favorite super team at this point. But the cool thing about the Fantastic Four, at least for me, is that you're more or less, when you examine the history of the Fantastic Four, you are basically examining the entire history from the Silver Age on of Marvel Comics. And, of course, the world around that. Marvel Comics has always portrayed itself as the world outside your window. And, it'll be interesting not only to look at these stories, which we will, begin with Fantastic Four number one next episode, but going forward with that, being able to examine what was happening in the world when these stories were being published.
I didn't even think about that one so much, but that is a great way to look at it also about what's going on in the world while they were writing the stories at the same time. Because my main focus was on the family interaction because that's what I think of the Fantastic Four as. It's always just like the family interaction between the characters.
That's the common theme that runs through it all.
Not so I don't sometimes I forget that they're part of the greater Marvel universe. Because sometimes Reed gets them into their own little stuff, and they don't. It feels like they're not attached to the rest of the universe until and then everyone shows up at their door. Then in the middle of it, somewhere while they're doing something else.
And that's the beauty of the book itself. I mean, they are not your traditional superheroes per se. They are explorers, they're adventurers. And I think that's really cool because not only did they start the whole Marvel age of comics, but because you frame them in that light, it allows you to introduce concepts in an almost very fluid way that you can then expand upon in other books. Lord knows we've seen the Negative Zone come into play in various storylines throughout Marvel history. We've seen Galactus affect the entire Marvel Universe Earth. Both those concepts spinning on Fantastic Four as well as a number of others, the microverse, so on and so forth. So, moving on, as far as what you, the listeners, can expect from this podcast, we want to do deep dives on Fantastic Four stories. We want to, do a variety of different runs from Lee and Kirby, of course, the Byrne run, Wade and Wieringo, uh, Hickman, Millar, DeFalco, everyone in between. We want to touch base on all of it going forward, which is kind of a daunting task. You're looking at over 60 years of comics, but that's plenty of material to pull from. Not only will we touch on Fantastic Four, we will do, some of the side series, the Human Torch stories and Strange Tales, the Thing in his own solo series, and Marvel 2-in-1. Various mini series that the Fantastic Four have had over the years. Uh, Personally, I would love if we got to the point where we got to talk to some creators on this show. No promises, but it would be a plus. I highly enjoy that experience for both myself as someone who's wants to geek out over all this stuff, but also being able to provide that to anyone who wants to listen to this show. I'd also like to maybe do some analyzing of maybe the Fantastic Four and other media here and there. Of course, we've got Fantastic Four First Steps that is coming out later on this summer. The Fantastic Four have had a couple TV shows. They've had a couple other movies. some of which I've watched, some of which I've desperately avoided. So we can pull the band-aid off on that, so to speak.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching Fan Four Stick from 2015. Like I said, I don't want to make this a negative space or whatnot, but there are some things that have better reputations than others. So, uh, what, from your perspective, can we add to listener expectations here, Shane?
I'm thinking it's gonna have a really interesting dynamic between the two of us. Looking at the because you're gonna obviously everyone comes into every book in a different looking at it in a different perspective. But like I come at especially looking at this book that's about family, having a family, and a very family friend first look at the book. Instead of like I said, I totally forget sometimes that they're part of the greater Marvel universe because they try to they seem to stay to themselves more than the rest of the universe.
One other thing that I would like to bring up as far as what you can expect from this show is we have this concept. I like to refer to it as the floating chair. That being, we want to have a little bit of a presence on this. We'll have a Facebook group. I'm sure we'll start up like an Instagram account and whatnot. Probably the Facebook group would be the easiest way to follow us as far as participating in this way. But if there is an issue of Fantastic Four that you're interested in, we will be announcing what we're doing in advance. And, if you would like to be on the show and discuss it, we would love to have you on here to help us, deep dive into those issues, those storylines, those creative teams. Uh, you know, Going forward, it will be kind of an open-ended free-for-all on that. Maybe later on as this show, if this show gets more popular, that we could do something like patron bonuses if we ever get to that point. It could become part of that. But at least initially, we would love to hear some other opinions on there.
Yeah, the floating chair was a big thing that we threw around for a while because we were looking at first just trying to get a third or up to four people just being permanent. I really did like the idea that we went to having the floating chair. So that gives a different perspective on each time we go into it, like at least a book. Maybe someone wants to do a story arc or whatever.
So, Shane, I really got to ask you, just so the listeners can get to know us a little bit better, is, you know, why should they come to this show? Why should they listen to us? What got you into the Fantastic Four as a reader?
As a reader, like what brought me to Fantastic Four initially was the terrible two was that 2000 early 2000 show, late 90s. When was that
Are you talking
Fantastic
about
Four?
World's Greatest Heroes?
Not World's Greatest Heroes. Was it World's Greatest Heroes? Yes, World's Greatest Heroes. When was that exactly?
I think that was 2005, 2006. That was right around the time the first movie got released. The first official movie, not the Corman picture, but the actual Fox picture, the Tim Story film.
I started reading Fantastic Four would have been like 2003, 2004.
You remember who your creative team was on that?
I started with the everyone's favorite Fantastic Four, which would have been Ultimate Fantastic Four.
And you still stuck around. So what
Yeah,
what kept you on that series?
I don't know. I didn't know better probably, and it was enough to keep me interested. Maybe it was just because they were in the bargain bins constantly at Books a Million back when, or Borders back in the day.
So as far as how I got into the Fantastic Four, this is kind of a weird story, but it's oddly similar to yours, Shane. Um, so when I was a kid, they were putting out like all the Marvel content. This is probably around 1989, 1990. All the Marvel content that they had released as like cartoon shows onto like their own video collection. and you go to like Woolworth stores and there was VHS tapes. God, I'm dating myself here. VHS tapes of all these.
You said Woolworth store, but you already dated yourself when you said that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at some point you just got to accept your age. But so yeah, you go to these stores or video rental store. They would have these tapes that you could watch. So the first one was that I picked up was Captain America. Go figure. While the Fantastic Four is my favorite super team, Captain America, favorite comic book character. But at the end of the Captain America video, they had a promo package. You can find it on YouTube. Uh, but it's literally them advertising the entire Marvel video library. They'd name a character, whether it would be Spider-Man or Cap, Doctor Octopus. They'd play like maybe a little 30-second blurb after it, or if it was something that had its own show, they'd play the intro of the show. Uh, on there was the Fantastic Four, the 1970s Fantastic Four show, the one that introduced Herbie the Robot. So you had Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Girl, The Thing, and as the video said, the newest member of the group, Herbie the Robot. That was my first introduction to the Fantastic Four. And I don't know, I was immediately drawn to Mr. Fantastic. I have this thing for leader characters. So immediately I was just like, oh man, Reed Richards just looks cool. Uh, so being that was my introduction to the Fantastic Four, when it rolled around to my birthday that year, and I was given a copy of Fantastic Four number 360 by Tom DeFalco and Paul Ryan. Uh, you have the Thing struggling with a gorilla on the front cover. The Human Torch flying up there in the middle of the jungle, and it goes to prove the old Silver Age adage that kids love gorillas in comics. Like it just had me hooked. But I'm also looking at this flaming guy, and I'm like, who is this dude that's rolling up on the Thing fighting this gorilla? I had no idea who the Human Torch was, simply because, like I said, Fantastic Four to me was Mr. Fantastic, the Invisible Woman, the Thing, and Herbie the Robot. But it was a fun introduction to Johnny Storm, who was admittedly going through some stuff in that issue. He was going through the fallout of Alicia Masters being revealed as a Skrull, and you know him having married her while she was a Skrull, or being impersonated by a Skrull rather. But somehow that kept me hooked, and I know some people give that run a little bit of flack. I have a little bit of a soft spot for the DeFalco and Ryan run. Speaking of which, Shane, you got into this with Ultimate Fantastic Four. Um, I'm hard pressed to believe, but I could be wrong. Is that your favorite run on the book?
No, absolutely
Not
not.
what is.
Uh, I've been thinking about that for a while. Um, I and it just kept coming back to the Jonathan Hickman Future Foundation stuff, which really isn't Fantastic Four, but still Fantastic Four. That was like I don't know. That's been my favorite. It's that, then followed by the uh Burn stuff.
And what sticks out to you about Hickman's run?
I just really liked the science adventure that was told in that story. It I remember when I read through it that I was always mad that I couldn't read it faster. And I never can say that about a lot of things because
I
I'm
mean,
already a slow reader. So
you're looking at a guy who thinks that single issue comics pass by too quick these days, and that was certainly true in around the 2009 2010 era as well. So yeah, what made you want those to go by faster?
I wanted to just eat it all up. Like I was just devouring it. I think, and for me, it's because I always have a backlog. So I was reading them at like 4 or 5 issues at a time. And it was still like, it seemed like I mean, for me, 4 issues is like an hour and a half. I'm a slow reader. For you, 4 issues is like 20 minutes. different reading. So like I wish I could just I was just wishing that I could ingest the material and the story quicker.
Fair enough with that. I completely get it. On my end, I'm more of a Mark Wade, Mike Wieringo uh, fan on this as far as my favorite run goes, which I mean, they did some incredible work. Like we stated, and even like you stated somewhat with the Hickman stuff, is that exploration in science is a big part of the FF. And I felt like the universe building and world building that was handled in that run was superb as far as Wade and Wieringo's work. Gorgeously rendered. Uh, but
Oh yeah.
writing, one of the things I really like that he did, I mean, you got to explore the Marvel Universe heaven, which was pretty great. Uh, but I think my favorite thing that he did was he recontextualized Doctor Doom as a villain. I feel like lately a lot of writers fall into the trap of Doom being more of an anti-hero, uh, which I'm not necessarily a fan of. I've always liked how the character, he's not a good guy. He is a benevolent dictator, that being said, in Latveria. But things happen that make Doom drop the facade of benevolence. And I feel like in the Wade and Waringo run, you really get to see that because this is one of the most twisted depictions of Doctor Doom that I've ever seen in my life. Uh, sacrificing uh, his first love, his initial girlfriend that he had way back in the day, uh, for just ultimate dark power. Uh, his maiming of Mr. Fantastic. Uh, the death of the thing and how that leads into not only seeing just the ultimate heroic sacrifice of Ben Grimm, but also that exploration of Marvel Heaven, the humanization of Galactus, which he expanded on tremendously. Just it's the run that sticks close to my heart. And if I'm going to recommend anything to people who want to get into the Fantastic Four, I always, Wade and Wieringo top my list every time.
I mean, you're not wrong for sure. I would not recommend either of the ones that I've said that I like as recommendations to get started into it, but I love them. They're just mine.
Well, and the important thing is we definitely recommend you checking those books out, especially since we're going to cover all of them on this show eventually.
Yeah. It's just that's, even Ultimate Fantastic Four, which you're very excited for.
Listen, the Ultimate Fantastic Four eventually gets us to the Maker. So I am a large fan of that concept and that character. And he's birthed out of Ultimate Fantastic Four. You do not get to that character without that series, and that's all right by me. Again, I'm going to come at this from a very objective place as we go through all these books and when we get to them. So I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I feel it's very important for us. Well, maybe not necessarily very important, but it's a little fun discussion. Shane, who is your favorite member of the Fantastic Four,
The Thing.
and why is the ever-loving, blue-eyed, bashful Ben Grimm your favorite character in the Fantastic Four?
Because he is the big brother to them all. He's the protector when they think that he's not going to be there, he's always there to protect them all.
Ben's the big brother. Yeah, obviously. He's the I'm not sure. Johnny's the cool uncle. But he's the you think it's almost like he's the favorite uncle for Franklin and Valeria.
Well, clearly,
Right.
clearly is the favorite uncle because
This
he's the one that he's the Mikey of the group.
I knew you were gonna segue back to Ninja Turtles somehow.
It's a thing. My bad.
No, yeah. Is he the Mikey of the group? No, he's not the Mikey. Ben Grimm is not the Mikey of the Fantastic Four.
No, no.
If
When
anything, is the Raphael of the
you said you were talking about Johnny there for a second. I said Johnny's definitely
yeah. Johnny is definitely the Mikey of the group.
Mikey
Yeah, yeah. Ben's Raphael. Uh,
for sure.
yeah, and yeah. I'm personally a fan. I'm just relating this to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is physically hurting me. Like,
Wow.
so we're running a Fantastic Four show.
There we are. It just so happens that I have two families in comics that I love.
And you know what? That's absolutely acceptable.
One of them just happens to be teenage turtles. Sometimes they're mutants. Sometimes they're aliens.
Every time they should be mutants. Every time. They're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I
They
know what they are.
when have they been aliens? See, this is where like, oh my God, we're getting off track here.
Yeah.
But like
Back to Fantastic Four.
so anyway, as far as I'm concerned, thanks for asking, Shane. I know I touched it on earlier, but Reed Richards, my favorite character in the Fantastic Four, of course, uh, said I identify with strong leader characters, but I like Reed. One, he's a loving father, and I'm going to be honest. So there's a little jealousy there because I'm a single guy. I don't have kids, you know. Uh, Life hasn't taken me in that direction. But you know, there's a little bit of wish fulfillment there as far as that character. I mean, I'm by far not the smartest person in the room wherever I'm at. But you know, there's traits that one can aspire to, if not exactly meet there. Uh, you know, we all his goal in life has been established back in the Heckman Run, solve everything. Uh, Now the kind of conviction that's a hefty goal, and Reed sticks to it. And I really like the idea of being able to commit yourself to a very lofty standard and constantly strive for it, no matter how impossible it might be. Constantly stretching.
The never-ending stretch.
But to be fair, I think he can only stretch like 500 feet. That's the canon. Might not be anymore. Because I feel
How big
like
was that stretch in New York?
which one?
The one for the vampire stretch when he brought all those
See,
people.
that's the thing about modern comics is I feel like we've stopped putting limits on characters as far as their upper abilities. Like take someone like Wolverine. We can talk about Wolverine because he was a reserve member of the Fantastic Four at one point, who used to be able to just, you know, heal quickly, like at an accelerated rate, and he would like be hurt. And now he's walked away from atomic explosions, and that is insane to me. I don't understand why we're taking limits off of characters. Like I get you want to tell a story, but at the same time, it really does remove the stakes and the drama from said story.
Well, he's the Jesus.
So it's supposed to be 1,500 feet,
Okay.
which I guess might work for what we saw in Blood Hunt, but
That sounds about right for what we saw in Blood Hunt.
I think it used to be like 500. I feel like it used to be 500. Again, I could be wrong, but no, I'm sure during our dives into the books we will get the proper answer to that question. Anyway, that being said, you know, what's coming up on this show? So, you know, now that we got out of the way, you know, kind of who we are and, you know, why we're doing this show, uh, going forward, we're going to start with some deep dives on at least the origins of the Fantastic Four. So, the next couple episodes, episode 2 will cover Fantastic Four number 1. Episode 3 will be Fantastic Four number 2. And episode 4 will be Fantastic Four number 3. Feel like that's a good place to start, and then we can kind of branch out from there, maybe hop around. But I really wanted to get the initial origin out of the way, as well as kind of the setup of their basic mythos, which those first three issues really do a great job, as well they should have, of putting all of those building blocks in place. So, uh, I mean, I'm excited to really sit down and dive deep into those, aren't you, Shane?
I'm very much excited to deep dive into those. I was gonna start tonight, but then I made notes for tonight's episode first.
Hey,
So
fine. We got a week. We'll get this all together and out in the world. So, all right. Well, uh, can't wait to keep going down this road. I'm glad to have you with me, man. I think this first episode was a great start, and I had a lot of fun talking with you, man.
yeah, I really am very excited to get diving into more Fantastic Four. I think there's stuff that I've never read that we're gonna touch on for sure in this.
Yeah, we're really gonna put that Marvel Unlimited subscription to the test.
Yeah, yes, we are. There might be stuff we have to find.
Oh, for sure. I know there's a couple things I want to touch on that I'm definitely gonna have to pass you off a physical copy on. So
Yeah. So
anyway, he's Shane Murray. I'm Nate Charles, and we would like to thank you all for tuning in to the first episode of the Fantastic Four Fancast. And hopefully, we'll see you next week.